Welcome, everyone. Today is special. If you take away even 2% of today's talk, it's going to change your life. I promise you it will, because it changed my life. And, I'm here today standing with you on this podcast because of some of the tools that I use to get where I am. So without wasting time, I'm going to dive right into it. Today, we're going to talk about fear. Have you ever been afraid of anything or have any kind of fear, right? I think most of us will say yes. In fact, everybody should be raising hands, because at different times of our life, we have been afraid of something. Even if, we have done things despite of the fear, we have been, right? Fear is something that we deal with day in, day out. And, when we were born as babies, we were afraid of loud sounds. And when we grew up, there were different things that we saw in our environment, in our life, that made us afraid, whether it was light sound, uncertainty, parents, teachers, brothers, sisters, elder siblings, whatever it is, right? We grew up with the fear. In fact, the science says that we are only born with one fear, that is of sound. The rest of the fear we learn in this life, we adapt as we grow. Our fear grows in different areas, and I didn't know that about myself, but now I see that in my children as they grew up into different ages, from the babies to now 6-year-old. I see them developing different fears. Obviously, some of the fears we have instilled in them, right? Because we wanted them to obey us, or, at times when you want to have some discipline, you do whatever you can. And even though you don't want it as a parent, but you inevitably end up developing a fear in them, so that they are able to listen and afraid, or do not do something that is a risk to them. So we develop that fear. What's really interesting is, yesterday only I made a post on Facebook group, in a private community, and I asked people what is their greatest fear, what are they afraid of, what keeps them up at the night, kind of thing. I made a question, and immediately people started interacting, telling different answers of what they are afraid of, all the way from starting from ghosts, loud noises, wars, sickness, being alone, partner leaving them, taking care of parents, and also a fear of losing a loved one, fear of dying before somebody, fear of somebody dying before them, fear of not having enough money, fear of not going to your full potential. There's so much fear that was in that post. Like, I think over 600 people commented, like within the first half hour or so. So what I did was, I was like, okay, great. People are open. People are aware what they're afraid of. Let me go check this on LinkedIn. And guess what? Crickets. Nobody left a single comment. Exactly the same post, but people were too afraid to even say and admit what they're afraid, and being afraid of being judged on that professional platform. And I understand, I am not judging them, but I'm just saying this is what fear does. Even though we want to say something or participate, we are just too conscious. Today I wanted to talk about fear because I see it as number one thing that stops people from living their full potential, or living their life freely. I saw that for myself. And when I saw that, and I was able to change myself with things, I started to look back and see what changed, right? There were periods I was in fear. I was not making decisions. I was not moving because I was afraid. So I started to look back what changed and how it changed, so I could possibly share it with people, and maybe, they can use the same things and see if that helps them. So I've been working on that, and I still work in progress, but I thought I'll share some of the discoveries I made through my own journey. I have to tell you that this is not something new. You might have heard it in another shape or form. Fear has been talked about since time and age. Sages who have walked through this earth have talked about fear. So we have books, scriptures, all kind of wisdom available to us about fear. But what I'm going to share is how I have applied some of it with my life, and hopefully it can be of use to you. As I was diving into fear, one of the things I was reminded of this quote by Dr. Dyer. So Dr. Dyer said that when you are in fear, there is no room for love. And when you are in love, there is no room for fear. And I thought how beautifully it describes any relationship, and it applies to any relationship. When you are afraid and fearful of your partner leaving or somebody rejecting you, you cannot have love in there. It just goes, right? And equally, when you are in love, you're so excited, there's no fear. You can go and talk and do things that you otherwise wouldn't do because you're in that crazy love feeling. Your adrenaline is running, and you are able to do those things that when you sat down and think you could not have done it. Think about the times when you propose the first partner or first girl or boy. You did it despite the fear, and you must have done so many other things that maybe when you look back today would seem crazy, and you think, how did I do that? What got into me to do that, right? So that's what love allows, or that's what fear stops us doing. Let's look at what fear really is. In order for you to have a fear, you need to have two things. One, it is directly in relation with time, right? You are afraid or fearful of something that will happen in time, right? And it's that time is future. It's always, always, always future. Fear is always about the future. Even if you are afraid of something that might repeat, right? Something that happened in past can happen again, but it will happen in future. It's not happening now. Your fear is always about future. And because it's always about future, it's always imagination, right? Because you cannot be in future without imagining about it. It's your projection of your future. It's your thoughts, what you believe could happen in the future, right? So it's always about time. It's always about future. And there's usually, the second thing is there's usually somebody or something else involved that is bigger than you, right? It is always about something that is bigger than you. It could be as a children, it could be a parent, it could be something unknown, as grown up bosses, some life situation, but it's usually bigger than you that you cannot find a way to control in the moment. So you're afraid of that thing. So that's what fear is. It's about time. It's about something bigger, and it's about future. And it's really an imagination. It's your story that you're building in your mind based on your past. If you understand that it's a story. It may or may not happen in future, but it's my imagination as I said right now. Then maybe it makes you easier to deal with, right? It gives you a little bit of breathing space so that you can do something about it, right? Think of it, all the people that commented on my Facebook post about all the fears that they have, in a way, they are aware of it because they have lived and relived that fear in their minds, in their imagination over and over again. But they're aware. The fact that you are aware of something that means you're not in that situation already. You're out of that situation, right? So here I am, right? Let's look at it. Imagine this is fear. And if I can see it from here, standing here, I can see and say, I am afraid of this, right? That means there is already separation. That means I'm already out of it. Otherwise, I wouldn't know that this is fear. The fact that I can see it, that means I'm already out of this fear. I can distance myself. I have enough distance to recognize it and do something about it. So that's the first realization. When you realize that you're afraid, it's a win-win situation, because your realization itself, your awareness itself is an indication that you're separate from that fear. That fear, whatever it is, imagination that might have tomorrow or in next moment, but it's still separate, and you have time to do something about it. When I realized this, it made such a big difference for me, because I knew I could do something about whatever the fear is, whatever it might happen tomorrow or day after or in a month, because I knew, given the time, I can come up with some solution to fix the thing, right? So hopefully when you start your journey and recognizing your fear, this will help you. The other thing is fear, because it's a learned experience. You have learned it from something in your life or somebody else's life, whether it's movie in your life or you've seen something has given you that fear. It's usually a trained, programmed thing that stays in your memory, in your body. That's what you call your mind. That is in your mind. That fear is in your mind. Let me give you an example. As a child, whenever I did something wrong, or whenever I was at risk or putting myself at risk, if an elder, my parent or teacher would, yell, scream, shout to warn me, it would make me numb, right? Because they were bigger than me, so I was afraid of that. So the louder voices created fear, and that somehow stayed within my body. Those instances where somebody shouted because I did something wrong, it made me numb, and because it happened more than once, and because it also had something in my memory, I repeated that instant because I was scared of it. In my mind, I ran that story more than once, a lot of times, so to speak. It became part of my memory. Now, 30 years later, the same 5-year child who is now 35 years old, sitting in a meeting, a boss or a customer or somebody, a higher authority, shouts or says something in a very serious tone of voice, what do you think it does to me? It immediately triggers the same program that 5-year-old child had, the same fear, and all of a sudden I become numb again, and I don't have any answer. I don't say anything. I'm afraid. I couldn't, I noticed so many times myself, and I didn't know why I wouldn't talk, until I recognized it was the same fear of that 5-year-old that was running in my body, that was afraid of the loud voices from authoritative figures. And that's why I could never say things to these people. But once I realized that this is their fear, once I gave that light and I say, oh, I can see you. You're that 5-year-old fear. I'm no longer 5 years. I'm 35-year-old. Thank you, for protecting me at that time. I think we can do without you now. And as I said that, I literally said that, I was able to walk away from that fear. It didn't make me scared. Now somebody shouts, it just makes me laugh, or, it does not trigger anything in my body for me to become numb or resist that fear or resist that um, dialogue. The action that you can take from there is look at you know look at the things you're fearful about. Make a list of the things. If you don't know what you're fearful about, observe your thoughts day in, every day. Write down what you are thinking, how you're feeling. Just write down every hour that these are certain things I thought. This is how I felt in last 1 hour. Make a note of it. Make a note of your emotions and see how fear shows up in different areas and different situations. And as you note the situation where you are fearful, ask the question, where did I learn this fear from? How did it come in my body? And in fact, as you start to recognize that you're being fearful about something in that situation, just simply breathe in and feel the fear in your body. Sit with it, feel where it is. And just by doing that, you're putting spotlight on the fear and it will fade away, right? You will recognize its imagination and it will fade away. And if not, if it's something that has a lot stronger hold on you, it will allow you to see deeper, sit with it, tell yourself that you're allowed to be afraid, tell yourself that it's okay to be fearful in this body. Literally say those words to yourself and see what happens. The fact that you honor that fear, the fact that you give it a light, attention, and you recognize that there is something that caused that fear, it allows that fear to just fade away. So you practice it enough times, it will go away. I am telling you, you will start to see a lot more freedom in your day, in your life, if you start doing these things. Haafiz, he was a mystic that lived thousands of years ago. He said, fear is the cheapest room you have in your house. I would love to see you living in better conditions. And this is what Rumi said on fear. On what fear is, it is non-acceptance of uncertainty. Once you accept uncertainty, it is all adventure. Think of it, whenever you can come to the acceptance that tomorrow is uncertain, tomorrow is unknown, and that we don't know everything and we cannot control everything, just gives you a moment and freedom there. The fact that I cannot control and do everything anyways, you let it go. You let go the fear. When you start to accept that the only two certain things in your life are being born and that will die. Everything else in between is a drama that we don't know, that will unfold as it needs to unfold from moment to moment. If you're able to accept that, things will become lighter. As I mentioned earlier, the reason I'm excited about talking about fear is the power it gives when you're able to get freedom from the fear or do just things despite of having the fear. The fearless does not mean absence of fear. The fearless people are those who are able to take action despite of the fear. So I'm really excited that I'm working on this. I'm going to end this episode with some of the wisdom that others who have walked before us have left us with. I am just sharing it because it made a difference to me and hoping it will. So, if you knew who walked beside you at all times on the path that you have chosen, you could never experience fear or doubt again. Let me repeat. If you knew who walked beside you on the path that you have chosen, you could never experience fear and doubt again. Dr. Wayne Dyer. I end this episode with this poem that Ramdas shared, was given to him by his friend Emmanuel. And this is about fear. What does the voice of fear whisper to you? Fear speaks to you in logic and reason. It assumes the language of love itself. Fear tells you it wants to make you safe. Love says you are safe. Fear says, give me symbols, give me frozen images, give me something I can rely on. Loving truth says, only give me this moment. Fear would walk you down the narrow path, promising to take you where you want to go. Love says, open your arms and fly with me. Every moment of your life, you're offered an opportunity to choose from love or fear, to tread the earth or soar to the heavens. Why would fear want to oppose the truth? Why would fear want to oppose the truth? Because truth has power to transform the fear. Fear believes it's fighting for its life. If you no longer allow fear to step valiantly before you and shout of cataclysm, it will creep behind you and say something reasonable. It will creep behind you and say something reasonable in your ear. Beware of reasonable, rational thinking, reasonable supposition. Doubt is rabbit's foot of the fear. Ask your higher wisdom. If it's not true that without fear you would have arrived exactly where you are now and more pleasantly, worry and fear are not the tickets on the express train. They are the extra baggage. You're going that way anyway. You are going that way anyways. Thank you. I hope this makes a difference in your life and you're able to take these principles, these words of wisdom and apply in your life, and it changes and transforms your own life. And if it does, please share this episode with others. Also, would you be kind enough to share with me in the comments what your takeaways were? What are you afraid? How do you work with your fear? Let me know how it is ruling your life and interact with me. Let's take on fear together. All right. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did and got some valuable nuggets out of it. If you liked it, there are other shows you can watch. They're exactly what you need. And I ask you to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the show. Really, I want to hear from you firsthand what you felt, what you liked, what you didn't like. So thank you and see you around.